Just want to see them.
Hand just so see your hands. Alright, Jemma, at this moment, I'm arresting you on suspicion of murder. Okay, you don't have to say anything, but you may have a defence. You mention one question, something which you later rely in court. Anything you do say may be given evidence, okay? Once you're in the cuffs. Okay, explain.
Friendship can be one of the most beautiful parts of life, a bond of trust and companionship. But what happens when trust is betrayed? What if that bond is built on lies, manipulation, and eventually murder? The chilling story of Jemma Mitchell and Mi-Kuen Chong is one that speaks of greed, desperation, and a fatal betrayal. What started as a seemingly benign friendship spiraled into a shocking case of murder that stunned a nation and raised alarming questions about human nature, trust, and vulnerability. The lives of Jemma Mitchell and Mi-Kuen Chong could not have been more different on the surface, yet they intersected in a fatal way. Jemma Mitchell, born in 1984, was an intelligent and highly educated woman. She came from a well-to-do family, studied human sciences at King's College London, and trained as an osteopath. Her academic and professional background painted a picture of someone who had the world at her feet. However, that promising exterior hid a tumultuous reality. Mitchell's life had begun to unravel by the time she entered her late 30s. A failed property renovation project had left her in serious financial distress, with mounting debts and few options. What had started as a dream to enhance her family's home had turned into a financial nightmare. This desperation would set the stage for a series of manipulative actions that culminated in murder. In contrast, Mi-Kuen Chong, known to friends as Deborah, led a quiet life in Wembley, North London. Originally from Malaysia, Chong had moved to the UK and was known as a devout Christian who attended church regularly. She was gentle, spiritual, and generous with her time and resources. However, she also had a history of mental health issues, including bouts of depression and paranoia. Though she lived modestly, it was believed that Chong owned valuable property and had a considerable amount of wealth. It was this belief that caught Jemma Mitchell's attention, sparking a deadly plan. The friendship between Mitchell and Chong began innocently enough, forged through shared religious beliefs in social circles. Chong was deeply religious and often reached out to people who needed help. Mitchell, despite her professional background, seemed to be struggling, and Chong likely felt she could offer her support. However, while Chong may have seen a friend in need, Mitchell saw something else, an opportunity. The relationship deepened as Mitchell ingratiated herself with Chong. It is unclear whether Chong was aware of Mitchell's financial problems or if Mitchell ever explicitly asked her for money. But their interactions took on a darker tone as Mitchell's desperation grew. For Jemma Mitchell, Mi-Kuen Chong represented a way out of her financial nightmare, and she was willing to take extreme measures to exploit that. By early 2021, Mitchell's financial situation had reached a critical point. Her failed renovation project left her with looming debt, and she was out of options. It was during this time that her friendship with Chong took a sinister turn. Rather than seek legitimate financial help or declare bankruptcy, Mitchell hatched a plan to manipulate Chong into leaving her wealth to her. At first, Mitchell seemed to rely on charm and persuasion, but she soon began drafting false legal documents that would indicate Chong intended to leave her house and assets to Mitchell upon her death. The level of premeditation involved was chilling. Mitchell not only planned to defraud her vulnerable friend, but decided that the quickest and surest way to gain access to her wealth was to murder her. The murder, as police would later argue in court, was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. Mitchell knew Chong was vulnerable and mentally unstable, which made her an easy target for exploitation. Mitchell's plan was cold, calculated, and cruel. On June 11, 2021, Jemma Mitchell visited Mi-Kuen Chong at her home in Wembley. It was supposed to be a friendly visit, but it would end in violence. The exact details of what transpired inside Chong's home remain unknown, but investigators later determined that Mitchell attacked her friend with a blunt object, causing severe trauma to her head. Chong died almost instantly. Mitchell then went to extraordinary lengths to cover up her crime. She wrapped Chong's body in plastic and left it in the house, likely considering how best to dispose of it. Over the next few days, Mitchell made preparations to transport the body. Her calmness during this period was both eerie and telling of her cold-hearted nature. For 2 weeks, Mi-Kuen Chong's body lay hidden in her own home, as Mitchell quietly planned the next steps. She carefully constructed her alibi and considered how to distance herself from the murder. But even in her careful planning, Mitchell made crucial mistakes. On June 26, 2021, Mitchell rented a car and drove over 250 miles from London to Devon, a picturesque coastal town. She had packed Chong's dismembered body into a large suitcase and intended to dump it in a remote area, where she hoped it would never be found. Mitchell was meticulous in her movements, but underestimated the technological reach of modern-day law enforcement. CCTV cameras captured her movements as she left Chong's house with the suitcase. The footage was damning, showing Mitchell struggling with the heavy suitcase, which police would later confirm contained Chong's remains. Once she arrived in Devon, Mitchell sought out a secluded wooded area in the town of Salcombe. There, she discarded Chong's body, believing it would decompose unnoticed in the quiet, tourist-friendly town. But her attempts at covering up the crime were in vain. The suitcase was later found by a local resident, leading to the discovery of Chong's decapitated and decomposed remains. The sight was horrifying, and it wasn't long before the police connected the dots back to Jemma Mitchell. As soon as Mi Kwin Chong was reported missing by concerned friends, police began their investigation. Their attention quickly turned to Jemma Mitchell, who had been the last person to see Chong alive. CCTV footage, cell phone data, and forensic evidence began to mount against Mitchell. Detectives found it suspicious that Mitchell had been in possession of Chong's legal documents, including a will that appeared to leave all of Chong's assets to her, a document that turned out to be a forgery. The final piece of the puzzle came when police searched Mitchell's home. In addition to the fake will, they discovered papers outlining her financial woes and desperate attempts to salvage her situation. It became clear that the murder was driven by greed. In July 2021, just weeks after the discovery of Chong's body, Jemma Mitchell was arrested and charged with murder. The trial of Jemma Mitchell at the Old Bailey in October 2022 drew widespread media attention. Prosecutors laid out their case. Mitchell had befriended Chong with the intention of manipulating her into handing over her property and assets. When that didn't work, Mitchell took matters into her own hands, murdering Chong and attempting to forge legal documents that would grant her access to Chong's wealth. Throughout the trial, Mitchell showed little emotion. She maintained her innocence, denying the charges and claiming that she had nothing to do with Chong's death. However, the evidence was overwhelming. CCTV footage, forged documents, and the damning fact that Chong's body had been discovered hundreds of miles from her home in Mitchell's rented car were impossible to refute. After just a few hours of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict. Jemma Mitchell was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 34 years. The court described her actions as cold-blooded, premeditated, and driven by greed. Chong's family and friends were left devastated by the loss of a woman they described as kind, generous, and deeply religious. The story of Jemma Mitchell and Mi Kwin Chong is one of deep tragedy. What should have been a friendship based on trust and support instead became a nightmare of manipulation and murder. The case raised questions about the vulnerability of older people and those with mental health issues, highlighting how easily trust can be exploited. For many, the most chilling aspect of the case was Mitchell's cold demeanor throughout the investigation and trial. Her complete lack of remorse and calculated approach to the crime painted a portrait of a woman willing to go to any lengths to solve her financial problems, even murder. Mi Kwin Chong's death serves as a reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind even the most seemingly benign relationships. As the legal proceedings came to a close, the public was left to grapple with the horror of how a friendship could lead to such a devastating and cruel end.